Welcome back to the vlog. It's been a little bit since we spoke last, but we got to catch up and cover Europe's Strongest Man and World's Strongest Man, the events, the highs, the lows, the competitors, some injuries, and some fun things that happened. So let's get into it. So we're going to talk about that and more on today's vlog. But if you haven't, make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget about those notification bells for all things Can Be Dude. But let's start today's vlog. Hello guys, welcome back. Let's get right into it. It's just been a crazy 3.5 weeks going from right before I left to Europe's course, recovering and training again for World's Strongest Man, heading down to World's Strongest Man for 8 nights. But it's been what a wild ride, probably one of the best experiences of my life. But I want to tell you all guys everything about what's going on today. But let's just start from the beginning. So originally with Europe's Strongest Man, I got the call about 10 weeks out that I'm getting the invite to compete with the 5 events being very close to what's that's going to be over at World's Strongest Man. Originally we had 13 competitors, but we went down to 12. 7 of those competitors had World's Strongest Man invites, and the 5 that didn't, so it was myself, Andre, Freddie Johansson, Konstantin Jarnasha, and Paul Dwyer. We got put into the European gulag per se, and had to kind of fight our way out in order to get the invite. So at Europe's there was probably a lot of tension in the air because of course you had 3 former champions all about to compete, but you also had these guys like myself that also were fighting for World's Strongest Man spots, and even just to make it out there because there was 3. Pretty much, Andres was doing the second one, but Freddie and myself, first time going Giants Live, so we want to make a statement. We want to put ourselves out there that we're the next best and greatest when it comes to the world of strongman. So when it came to traveling to Leeds, so coming from Boston, of course it was a pretty easy flight. It is just 2 flights. Got in on Thursday and we competed Saturday, so had kind of that extra day before the media day to kind of wind down and kind of rest from travel. We did, of course, media and rules on Friday, and then Saturday the bus left around 1:30 from the hotel to head over to the First Direct Arena. And of course, it was a sold-out show, about 12,000 fans, and also you can say things were pretty surreal on the way getting there. So nerves are probably as high as they could ever have been. I threw up twice around breakfast, and I threw up another 2 times during the contest. So you could say that I was pretty ready to compete that day. So the events at Europe's went as follows: Stonewalk, car yoke, deadlift ladder, Viking Press, stones. First event pretty much kind of went, I would say, as expected. It was pretty interesting walking with those stones. At one point, I had to stop to let the stone kind of correct itself back in the right place because it got my arm twisted so much. But I was hoping for probably a little better results. I was hoping for somewhere in the mid-pack, and I'm getting 19 out of 12. But it's one of those events that I was hoping to beat Rano at, because Rano doesn't have that great of a grip, so I thought I'd at least have to beat Rano, and he ended up beating me by a meter. So probably would look for redemption next time around. But Stonewalk, I went solo, but the next 4 events I think were pretty kind of surreal because now you're going head to head with these guys that you always kind of looked up to. So head to head with the cardio with Alexi. On the deadlift, I went against Luke Stoltman. On the Vikings, I went with Ivars, and on the stones, I went with Pablo. So all these great guys that you look up to, watch at these big meets, but now you can call them your friends and peers, which is just a whole nother level of just excitement and just meeting new guys, especially heading up into the heavyweights. So on the car yoke, I knew that training went really well for me leading up to this. So going against Alexi, if I could potentially pull off a win against him, that would be really huge for my confidence. But I ended up squeezing out the win by like 0.1 of a second against Alexi, which was great, even with a short drop, but ended up losing to Luke by 0.2 of a second, and he ended up getting the event win, and myself taking second on the event. So heading into the deads, I think this is where I was getting a lot of confidence. So right now with a 9th and 2nd so far in the first 2 events. So on the deadlifts, this went really well for me. Ladder traditionally is a very good deadlift event for me, so I really wanted to put on a good score. But leading into training and leading into the contest, I had it in my mind when they switched the weights from 25 kilo jumps to 20 kilo jumps. So instead of having 765 and then 815, we had around 750 pounds and then a jump up to 792 pounds, or 360 kilos. So I knew right there and then that I thought a fast 4 bars would be really good. So at least mixed grip the first 4 bars and then have enough time and energy to strap up and go for the 5th bar. So that was my my plan going into it. In hindsight, I think that maybe I should have done a little more of a conservative approach, maybe similar to that, what I've done in the previous deadlift ladders at OSG in 2021 and OSG in 2023, where I mix grip the first 3 and then strap up for the 4th and 5th. So the event started out great, so I mix grip the first 3. Leading to the 4th, going for the 360 kilos or 790 pounds, I ended up having a good pull on it, but felt something snap and tear in my right arm. Of course, the mixed grip arm, the under overhand. And from there, I hitched it and of course held on to dear life in terms of not giving up that left, because I knew finishing that would be a really good time. So a lot of people were asking, even online, because that put up a video with Giants Live, and that ended up going viral, in terms of why were you mixed gripping in that situation. And the main answer is that it was more of kind of improvisation, because I needed to finish up that lift. But I kind of panicked in the moment because my arm went. So I switched the grip to go double overhand. I quickly forgot that I'm not that strong double overhand, especially for something like 360 kilos. So I went back to the original grip, and pretty much just kept pulling in, and it did really hurt throughout the whole process. You probably could see the pain in my face, but something I had to squeeze through. And then looking over at Magnus, he was about to give me the down call, and then the minute I get that photo finished, lockout, he gave me the down call, but unfortunately I didn't have enough in the tank to go over and go for the 5th bar. So from there, of course, I was talking to Darren. He had me go talk to Rocco, who was the chiropractor on set that day, but had to do an interview with Neil first and then head over to Rocco. So ended up stealing this clip from Giants Live.
Performed this time.
I was the last pairing with Luke Stoltman, and I knew that a fast 4 would be really good. You know what? My plan was to go mixed grip for the first 4 and maybe go YOLO for the last one, but I was really struggling on that one. I tried to hitch it, then I tried to go overarm, then went back to the mix, and I was able to squeeze it out. But finishing the last one, I felt the pop, but I'm still hanging on. So we'll see.
You want to see it? Yeah.
I've messed up the brachialis before.
So actually he had a bit of pain in his bicep, so he wasn't sure if it was either a tear or any problems with if he can compete. I said, well, we need to have a feel because Alice stones are coming up, so we need to be certain that it's not a problem. From the testing, it didn't show that there's anything wrong. Could be like a small muscle tear. Well, those guys are giving their best out there. So on the warm-up with Alice stone, we'll find out. It doesn't seem anything like problematic, so we'll figure it out.
So from there, kind of going into the Viking Press, I got 2 good warm-ups going on, but of course I had the thought that, crap, I just kind of tore my forearm, maybe hurt my bicep. So did some warm-up reps, and they felt pretty good. So I thought I would just give it a ride. I didn't really feel too much pain, but usually you shouldn't feel that much pain because it's not where, of course, put in the position where the forearm hurts. So heading out there on the Viking Press, of course, I didn't really know what the number to be. I knew Luke had 13, so I wanted to get around that. And I know how great a presser Luke is. So heading up with Ivars, I was able to kind of get a good amount of reps, able to get 13, almost squeezed out 14. I think I did get that 14th rep, but Magnus didn't really give me that. And unfortunately, I think I just ran out of gas in terms of catching the weight and be able to try to squeeze out some signals like 42 and also Alexi ended up doing to squeeze out second and first place. So that's the only probably mistake I made on the Viking Press, but that's still pretty great results, tying with Luke and Ivars, tying for third place in an event like that. Being a press specialist, I want to always win those press events, but I can always kind of dial it in and know what to work on it for next time in order to kind of win out, and especially having a good gauge in my head in terms of now with the Vikings, knowing the Vikings at Giants, knowing the Vikings at Worlds, knowing what kind of numbers to hit going forward. So the last event being Stones, at this point it was only kind of like it was a 5-horse race between Alexi, 42, Ivars, Luke, and myself. And everybody else were a little too far out of contention. So I still had a really great shot in terms of hitting the podium, even though I thought I probably gave up some points going forward. I think I could have done a little better on the nickel carry, probably potentially done a little better on the deadlift if I didn't hurt myself. But I woulda, shoulda, coulda, something that we have to come back and work on. But hindsight's always 2020. So going to the Stones, so the main concern was the brachialis and all. Stone series is something that I've been trying to really improve upon. I think I had a great training leading up to it, but unfortunately couldn't really just show my stones because of the forearm tear. So going into that, I ended up, of course, having a decent run, but had to pretty much press the first two stones onto the platform. And then after the 160, my arm was just screaming in pain. So I thought just to kind of cut it out and just finish there. I think I probably got pressed the first stone and loaded the first stone and got the same amount of points. So I still went through that effort just to kind of keep pissing that off. But finishing 6th at my first Giants appearance, being in the top half, that was pretty much the main goal. Of course, always the main goal is to come in and win the contest, but the second goal should be doing enough in order to get an invite or to get an invitation to the next big contest and the next potential thing in the line, and that being World's Strongest Man. So 42 ended up being the best out of the 5 in the European Gulag, myself being second. So we automatically got an invite from that. That was what was discussed in the rules meeting, the top 2. But of course, based off of all the kind of injuries that happened and other people dropouts, that's where we end up seeing more people from Europe, like Paul Dwyer, come through the line. And Paul ended up having a great show too, even though not having kind of great events. And then of course, then some individuals dropping out, like Alexi didn't end up came to Worlds, but ended up competing at Worlds. We lost Shane Flowers, so we still had a pretty good, strong European crew coming to Worlds. Overall, the last thing I wanted to say about Europe's is it was just a great contest. I think just Giants Live, it's very fast paced, but they put on such a great show, for the audience, and it's also pretty enjoyable as a competitor. Of course, it is a fast pace in between, but I also do enjoy when the contests do finish up a little early. But I would say the whole contest was a blur, but 10 out of 10, I would come back and do it all over again. The fans were great. We did a meet and greet for about an hour and a half afterwards, and they're just so enthusiastic for the sport of strongman, and hope that will come to America, to Italy, and many other kind of countries soon, to have that type of style, that have such a great product to present strongman in the best light going forward. But congratulations to Luke Stoltman and Ivars and Alexi for hitting the podium. Luke getting his second European strongest title. And of course, 42 coming in fourth was awesome. Had a great battle with Shane Flowers all day. And I know that, of course, Pavlo didn't have a great run at it at Europe's, but I told him that he might have been slightly overtrained just based off his videos, and that he's going to smash it at World's Strongest Man. And lo and behold, he ended up having a great World's Strongest Man and making the finals. So I think that was pretty much the case. But sometimes in these different shows and these different arenas, you go into a contest very, very well prepared, and not have the best showing, but sometimes you just gotta have to work that muscle of competing, getting back into that atmosphere, being around the guys, doing the right, correct warm-ups in order to really sharpen your knife and hit it harder. So I think that's exactly what Pablo did. I think sometimes winning brings complacency. So maybe he might have been came into Europe's Strongest Man a little complacent, but I think that. And he needed that in order to have that successful World's Strongest Man run that he just had. So let's talk about World's Strongest Man. But first, let's talk a little bit about the training leading up to it. So I get back home, and lucky enough, I have Adam Bishop waiting at one of my gyms that I go to. So my Saturday spot is Titan Barbell. So Adam was here because his wife was doing the Boston Marathon. So we ended up getting 4 good training sessions in, and it was very timely that he was here because coming back from Europe, I ended up kind of hurting my arm a good amount. There's no way I could mix grip those bars at World's Strongest Man. So lucky enough, Adam was very generous to kind of teach me his setup when it comes to the deadlift ladder, doing the kind of the quick straps. So I really worked that. I would say I worked that technique. I got 3 good trainings in, but was able to kind of perfect it just enough to have a pretty good run at Worlds. It wasn't my best deadlift ladder run, but I think it was very good given the circumstances and everything that happened prior. So coming back from Europe was a little bit of a ride. Ended up getting sick a few times, despite all my efforts in taking healthy supplements to build up the immune system, using a lot of sprays and disinfectants and hand sanitizer in order to kind of keep my hands clean away, and then keep that away from my eyes, ears, and nose, mouth. But for the most part, just did everything, but it still ended up getting decently sick. Ended up in the hospital one of the days with a very swollen gland, a few days out from when I would leave the world. So all that in that short kind of span of less than 2 weeks was pretty nerve-wracking, but it's one of those things where in any prep and any situation you get hit with variables that you just have to take on and keep moving forward. It's just you don't have there's no option when you especially get invited to your World's Strongest Man and you want to compete to your very best. These opportunities don't come around all the time. It could be my last. You never know what's going to happen tomorrow, a few months down the line. There's always big personal items, world events. So when you do have the opportunity to get called up and you want to do your very best and make the most of every second, every minute, every hour of it. So even though we got a little sick and had some tough training with the forearm, I just wanted to keep pushing forward. So Bish was awesome, not only just a friend but just a mentor during all this. We just led so much good advice, and he was heading into his 9th Worlds when I was heading to my first. Even got to catch up with Rob Kearney. Headed out to Lightning Fitness for a day, and it was great to catch up with them. But those guys, and of course Bish, and then of course my friend Eric Dawson, they were just so helpful kind of during this time in terms of building kind of motivation and kind of sharing relatable stories, because probably every strongman in the business has have tough preps or just variables that have happened. So a lot of it's good to hear about just different stories of them kind of persevering and getting through everything. So the 4 workouts I got with Bishop, I think were awesome, exactly kind of what I needed, but very serendipitous that I would come back from a big Giants live and he's just waiting for me to come train with him. So we ended up, Bish ended up leaving Saturday. I left the Sunday before World's Strongest Man. But man, just the getting there with all 30 athletes, meeting everybody, a lot of course familiar faces, a lot of new faces, was pretty nerve-wracking. And I thought I did well, kind of composing myself and being able to bring my best light. But when I would get back to my hotel room, I would be pretty nervous and just kind of taking it all in that, holy smokes, I'm competing at World's Strongest Man. And only in a few days. So the Monday and Tuesday leading up to it was a lot of media days. We also did some health screenings. Took all our pictures, went kind of through the different rounds. And that's almost kind of a practice in itself in terms of composure, bringing your best light and all. And wasn't a big fan of doing the first thing in the morning, but something that's what you just had to do. So, World's Strongest Man, day one. Bus was pretty early. We got probably left around 8, no, or earlier, around 8 to get there around 8:15, and started the warm ups. So we had the Webster stones to start with, which were a little different than the nickel stones. I thought that the nickel stones were probably a little harder, but the Webster stones, it seemed like everybody was able to move a lot faster than the Webster stones. But there's one of those events, in kind of hindsight, looks like I think just solid farmers training would have been good practice for that, and that's something I kind of really got away with. I did pretty much maybe too much work with the actual implement. Rather than just kind of work on other items that like farmers and other grip accessories to make my hands and wrists and forearms really strong. So something I was looking at and thinking about maybe for next time in the prep. But this was a little tough one. So going in with the forearm, like keeping it straight usually didn't really affect it or hurt it, but just coming off right off the bat with the Webster stones, I felt pretty much a tweak, and I had to kind of just grind it out. So I ended up getting a meter longer than Europe's, but just thinking that the numbers were a little higher here versus Europe, so I thought maybe 20 meters was something I should have probably been shooting for. However, I think that still would have probably been last in the group because I ended up having a really tough grip group there. So maybe when that event comes around, know how to train it for my best self, for my best peak going forward. Second event being the deadlift ladder. Deadlift ladder was pretty difficult, I would say, because the bars were bendy, but they were pretty much a power bar on top of the Rogue deep dish plates. So the setup looked really cool, but kind of being on that platform, there of course some little divots, but that's what you kind of expect with deadlift ladders and being on that stage. I don't think it really affected too much, but it just ended up being a little shaky of lockouts. But I ended up getting the fourth bar, had to do like a major hitch. The quick strap technique I learned from Bish was helpful, but at times my straps would get really caught into the knurling there. So maybe if I had a little more practice, maybe for next time, I can be a little faster in that sense. But I was able to get to the fifth bar this time, but just at that time, I heard 5-10 seconds left, and I take 20 seconds to hitch a bar. So ended up calling it from there. I was going head to head with Big Gav, and of course a pleasure to compete with Big Gav all weekend. So we of course got to spend a lot of time at Europe's. So again, we were being back in the same group, and also to the same group as Foytu. So this is funny because this is my third straight contest with Foytu. So we did OSG together, and we made the finals together. Went to Europe's, and then we're in the same group at Worlds. So just seeing a lot of Foytu, a lot of Gav. So about two great guys, and would be excited to compete with them all over again going forward. But in terms of the rest of the group, in terms of this situation, at this point, Mitch had pretty much won the first two events. And of course, Austin Andrade having also squeezing out a lot of good points too. And then of course the last member of the group being Spencer Remick. So we had a pretty tough group. I think a lot of people would have guessed that Mitch was gonna win the group, but I think it was pretty up in the air in terms of potential who would be in the stone off. Looking back at it, maybe not being a healthy self, I probably guessed right in terms of I was going to see Andre and Smash being in the stone off. Going into the Sandbag steeplechase, I think historically I would think that this would have been an event that I can really use my athleticism, use my conditioning, and launch some of those sandbags, but going into it with the forearm strain, this is the one thing that extremely pissed it off. We tried a lot of the Sandbag picks on all three of them leading into it, and just kind of really hurt. So we're just gonna save it all for the event. And when I was going for it, I did the initial pick, did the initial repick on the largest bag, and ended up feeling the biggest crunch in my life that pretty much brought me to my knees. It was pretty kind of pretty shocking, and then getting pulled off by Darren, and then only thing I could feel was just embarrassment and pain, all mixed into one, right from that get go. So knowing that, I kind of retore everything that I healed up in between Europes, and maybe then some, because the swelling ended up getting pretty large. As you can see, the swelling's pretty much there, but the swelling held off just enough for day 2 for me to compete into, again, similar situations to Worlds. Right after the event, I heard it. We had Viking Press, so again, I wasn't really sure how Viking Press was going to go. I did pretty much. It was a situation where I could take the option of pulling out, but I said we'll see how tonight feels, we'll see how the morning feels, and then we'll see how the first event feels, or I would say warm-ups. So we kind of stuck to our guns. So that night felt good, and the morning felt good, and then went to the warm-ups, and I was able to do 275 and 315 out of the rack pretty comfortably. So at that point, you just had to kind of send it. No option. Just, it's World's Strongest Man. I needed to go do my thing. So that's what we did. So knowing kind of what to hit based off the numbers from the first group, I know pretty much if I did what I did at Europe's, that would be very good. The only thing that was different at Europe's was that you couldn't, once you drop it, you can do no more reps. Here you're allowed to drop it and re-pick it up and bang out reps. So going into this, I was a little skeptical, but also kind of fired up. But once I banged out the first 3 reps, I knew that it was on. So really started going after it, and trying to get as many as I can. So I ended up getting 10, 2 reps, and then squeezing out a single rep. And then ended up hitting 13 reps, which was a pretty strong number. Definitely kind of a top third among all of them. But again, that's not satisfactory for me. I want to always win the press, always do the best. So something to kind of work off, but still pretty happy with that performance, given the circumstances. And then the last event being the car yoke, being 1,000 pounds, pretty rigid car yoke, and a little different than that of Europe's, but ended up being around 30 seconds to kind of finish the car yoke. It was a little tough being on that staging, and of course being 1,000 pounds in the 5th event. So at that point, I just kind of grinded it out and just really wanted to kind of finish. And that was pretty much my World's Strongest Man qualifying round. So I ended up taking 5th out of 6. So Big Gav unfortunately had to pull out that's unfortunate, but he was having a great show. So I know that next time around he's going to do great whatever contest he does next. So really looking forward to competing with Gav. He's of course a great dude. Going into kind of the rest of the weekend. So at this point you had a rest day, and then going to the finals. And of course all the final guys were all there. And ready to compete. All of them looked very sharp. The top 5 group winners ended up being the top 5 in the finals, and then the stone-off individuals or the stone-off winners ended up being the bottom 5, which was interesting. I wonder if the stone-off component added to some fatigue to some of those individuals. But having 3 brand new guys in terms of Smash, in terms of Tristan Hoth, also Wes Stravinsky, and then the great battle between Mitch and Tom. Tom looked very poised. Tom just was doing whatever he can, and I think at one point when he was looking at the scoreboard, I was right behind him, and he was saying when he had the lead in the first day, it was his contest to lose. So Tom looked like the champion he does, and shows why the last 5 years World's Strongest Man goes through Tom Stolman. But just learned so much in that those finals days. At one point, they were doing the keg for over like 90 minutes. But just being poised for 90 minutes on one single event is pretty interesting. You can't really train for that. How do you really kind of expect? You can, but it's going to be kind of very difficult and very time consuming. But something to kind of think about. And for a lot of the guys being in the Northeast or being in the different parts of the Northern Hemisphere and coming to South Carolina, something really hot, like how do you manage that heat during the whole time? So I came away with learning from World's Strongest Man that you have to be adaptable, you got to be heat resistant, you got to be durable in so many different ways. So there's so many kind of different takeaways, and just like, when do you turn it off? When do you turn it on? Like, how do you conserve energy? There's just so many components that goes into kind of winning World's Strongest Man, and competing with these guys. I got a front row view of that. So look forward to kind of bringing all that back and bringing just learning so much and just getting more large. Of course, I know I have the skill set to compete with these guys in the finals and beyond. I just needed that bigger motor, so I just got to put in the work, earn it, and come back a bigger, stronger, faster version of myself. So I think that's a good place to wrap up the video. But thanks for tuning in, and the best is yet to come. So today I went to the ortho and got another MRI done, so we'll see what they come back with. The first MRI came back with some tears in the forearm, some damage to the biceps. So do I need bicep surgery? I don't know. I guess we'll find out probably in a week or so. But either way, I was planning to take time off, planning to take time to get bigger, stronger, and work on my goals, and even work on a lot of personal goals of mine. So a lot of good things going forward. So we'll see. Maybe next time we chat, hopefully the bruising will have gone down, and we'll have an idea of what kind of type of recovery. But either way, it's only 6 or 12 weeks. When I talk about injuries, a lot of it's more mental than anything. In forearms, biceps are very easy to come by, and of course, other individuals, just if this ever happens, they're not death sentences, it's just minor setbacks. But usually, when one door closes, another one opens. So an opportunity to sharpen your game in other areas, so you can come back faster, stronger, better when it's time to compete, when it's time to get that training in. So all things to consider. So any questions, guys, or anything you want me to comment, put it down there in the comment section. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and notification bell, and expect more stuff. I have some good podcasts coming. I have some good videos that need to be posted, so stay tuned. But until next time, everybody, stay strong.